Hello and welcome to the Watering Hole. Thanks for checking out this clip. Don't forget to like and subscribe because that'll make the baby Jesus cry, and I know how much you guys love making the baby Jesus cry. Anyway, on to the articles. We're going to start...
We're safe.
I have this cropped wrong because I cropped it for a different article. Okay, so this is the title article from the stream. This is from Science-Based Medicine, The Science of Biological Sex. So this article is written by Dr. Stephen Novella, who, if probably a good portion of our audiences are both familiar with Dr. Novella. He's the main host of Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, the podcast. Really good podcast. Highly recommend it. I really, really enjoy it. Steve has always been kind of the joy killer on the show, like where people like get excited about some new scientific discovery. He'll be the one that comes in like, yeah, but how does it scale though? And they'll be like, oh, well, they haven't actually done anything to show how well it would scale. So he's the one that kind of like keeps it real and like grounded.
He just kind of reminds everybody that, hey, there's an order to these things.
Yeah. Which I say joy or buzzkill is the word I was looking for. He's not really. It just sometimes it's like everybody starts having fun. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But I really appreciate him for that, actually, because like that, like you can kind of see like how easy it is to get caught up in something exciting. And then like, okay, no, you got to keep these things in mind. So it's a really important skill to have. Anyway, so he's a clinical neurologist. So he's talking about the science of biological sex. He knows how brains work. And he knows how to read the research on neurology and stuff like that. So this is like right up his alley. So skip the introductory stuff. One point he says, for most people, wrapping their head around a reality that may not conform to traditional notions of strictly binary sex and gender takes a lot of processing. Misconceptions about the basic science are rampant and are in fact encouraged by the culture warriors. Those are the people that are the gender criticals that are anti-trans for
turfies.
The TERFs, yeah. Many of those who are pushing back against trans healthcare and broader acceptance are explicitly premising their position on the claim that biological sex is strictly and obviously binary. They portray themselves as taking the scientific high ground, and anyone who questions this obvious biological fact are the ones engaged in pseudoscience. And then he gives an example of...
I can actually name so there's an argument that I hear a lot from that group of people. When you point out that intersex people exist, they typically go, but that's an anomaly, and then they ignore it. And you're like,
yep. That. Let's see. I think I highlighted that one in red. This is a long ass article. Yeah. So the point of promoting the fiction of strictly. See, this is why I'm doing this one first before I've had all the scotch. The point of promoting the fiction of strictly binary sex is that it eliminates the middle ground. There are two sexes and nothing in between. Anyone who does not in some way fall in between is clearly an aberration. Further, and this is often the point, they claim that any conflict between genitals and sexuality must be a mental disorder. Given all the biological evidence, however, it seems unavoidable to conclude that human sexuality is bimodal with lots of variation in the middle. And that's where he's saying like they're trying to define trans people out of existence.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I've noticed a lot from that because I've had those conversations with people online and offline, and because usually the go-to is to say like, what about intersex people? And then people try to dial everything down to just genitalia, and you have to go, well, we have phenotypical representation, yes. We have gonadal representation. We have gametal representation. We have all that, but there's more to it than that. There's multiple different factors that go into just assigning sex to a person that go over and above, does it have dick or no? And it feels as though it's a thought stopping technique almost to try to like hyper simplify everything.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable truth is biology is complicated. I know that might seem strange to a lot of people, but biology is complicated.
Well, we get into that because that's the thing though, is like why would we expect sex to be the one thing in biology that is simple? because everything about biology is messed up and complicated, and like all sorts of nuance and exceptions to rules and everything. Like, why would sex be the one exception to all that?
And because people need things to be very, very simple. Well, it's easier to operate that way.
It's something I've said before, is that like with like, especially because like this is an area where atheists are getting caught up in the turf train, where like, because they'll be like, oh well, like I like it when you take apart these religious arguments or whatever, but like when you talk about trans issues, you've fallen into religion there, because clearly sex is binary, blah 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 blah, and they'll get into it like that. But it's like, if you accept evolution, you know that sex had to evolve slowly and gradually over time, which means that there was a long period of time where sex was not like there wasn't male there, like if you look into the history of how sex evolved, one of the things we study is algae to give us a hint as to what might have happened in the past, because there are species of algae where it's like they're not really male or female. They're like this one is algae strain A or whatever plus, and this is algae strain A negative, because like this one's got like a little bump there and that one's got a little indentation there, and the bump kind of fits in the indentation, but it's not really differentiated enough to actually be sex. Or like male and female, but that's how they do their gene swapping for reproduction, for sexual reproduction. And so it's like it's a gradient, it evolves, it's a spectrum. But like, so if you accept that about evolution, why would you think that like now that it's evolved, we see so many different things in evolution that like we can see leftovers from others? Like why would there not be differences that don't fit into a strict binary for sex the same way other evolutionary traits get left over? And like, I don't know, it just, anyway.
I'm just reminded of the SpongeBob meme where it's like it's SpongeBob and Patrick, and it's the whole meme where it's like, I'm this, what does that mean? It means he's scared of that. So I'm just thinking of like, he's a turf, what does that mean? It means he's scared of the word Klinefelters.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. I don't know what the word Klinefelters is. Is that one of the ones where like Mullerian duct syndrome?
So Klinefelters is a genetic condition where somebody who's considered assigned male at birth gets double X chromosomes.
Okay, yeah.
And it aversely, if they still have a Y chromosome, but they just have the extra X chromosome, and it can cause them to start growing a ton of traits we normally associate with females. So like breast growth, breast cancer, osteoporosis, all that can like go up with that.
Different karyotype.
Yeah, it's so it's just one of those things that you have to like, you factor it in.
Yeah, so the notion that sex is not strictly binary is not even scientifically controversial. Among experts, it's a given, and it's an unavoidable conclusion derived from actually understanding the biology of sex. It's more accurate to describe biological sex in humans as bimodal, but not strictly binary. Bimodal means that there are essentially two dimensions to the continuum of biological sex. So in order for sex to actually be a binary, there would need to be two non-overlapping and unambiguous ends to that continuum, but there are not. And as Stephen says in the article, or Dr. Novella, there's every conceivable type of overlap in the middle, hence bimodal, not binary. And so people often say like, oh, well, that's a small percentage of the population. Like they'll usually say less than 1%. We'll see.
So are redheads.
We'll see later in the article that it's actually closer to around like 1 to 2%. And this is just speaking like of intersex people or people with abnormal karyotypes that they're not necessarily intersex, but they don't have the chromosomes that you would expect for their biological sex. Okay, I'm saying biological sex, but it's, as we'll see later in the article, that's kind of a weird thing to talk about. But it's the overlapping middle, these minority of people, that are the very point of the discussion.
That's why the anomaly argument never really it never really worked with me. I'm just like, does the anomaly not exist? Like, cool, we'll grant the argument. Does that mean those people aren't there? Oh, so they do exist? Okay, then we have to account for them.
Yeah, absolutely. like I don't get that. So So he says, at first glance, looking superficially at the human population, it may seem binary. This is because binary and bimodal can look very similar if you don't dig down into the details, so let's do that. And then he gives, these are the characteristics that he uses to define biological sex. He says there's genetic sex, so that'd be your karyotype mostly, but not exclusively. There's other characteristics that go into that as well. There's morphological sex, which is reproductive organs, external genitalia, gametes, secondary morphological sexual characteristics, and some more. He includes sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression as part of biological sex. I kind of like that.
I think that's so. Granted, I'm a layman who ends up having to study this stuff autodidactically. So it's very, like, whenever I say I don't necessarily agree with something, it's coming from a place of, like, not even being close to an expert. The way that I've always seen sex categorized is you've got five different types of ways that you show phenotypical representation: gametal, gonadal, genitalia, and then there's one other one that I can't remember. But chromosomal. Those are the types of representations that are all about sex when we're talking about biology. But this is a little bit of a different categorization method.
Yeah, so
than what I've read on.
So what he gets to later in the article is that there actually is some it's preliminary at this point, but it's showing all the same signs as homosexuality did back when that first started being researched. Mm-hmm. But there is some preliminary evidence suggesting that gender identity and gender expression are like they're functions of your brain and how your brain develops, and they're like set in kids by the time they hit age 3, which is highly indicative of a biological basis. So
that would also make sense because, like, even some of the most, like, right-wing trans people tend to say that, like, oh, they knew they were trans at, like, age 4 or 5. Like, the most famous one, probably Blair White, literally said she knew she was trans at age 5. So that actually tracks with this with stories you generally hear from people who are trans.
Yeah. Oh shit.
You okay?
No, I just accidentally hit the back button.
Oh.
So I went to my starting page and was like, oh, where'd the article go?
Everything's gone.
Yeah, so starting with genetic sex, most people, like, when you say binary, it would be either XX or XY. Those are your chromosomes, that's your sex. So most people do fall into one of those two patterns, but there are also all the other patterns like the XXY, XYY, XXX, and a bunch more. I think there's, I forget the number, is like 16 or 20 or something like that, different potential combinations. Might be less than that.
It's something high. I don't remember the
It's
exact
higher than
number.
you would expect.
The last time I remember even looking at the number was when I was studying for a debate years ago, when I was looking at the World Health Organization stats on this. I don't remember anymore. It's been years.
That's fine. And then further, some people can be mosaic. So some of the cells in their body can be XX, while other cells in the body can be XY. And there are lots of different conditions that can cause that. The one that comes immediately to mind is if you're chimeric. So that'd be like if you were twins in the womb, but like one embryo absorbed the other one and it was fraternal twins and one was XX, one was XY, then like some of your DNA will be XX and some of it will be XY. I remember a CSI episode about that where like this guy was getting away with murder because all the DNA evidence he left behind was from his chimeric twin. And so when they swabbed his cheek for the DNA sample, they didn't get it.
Oh.
So they eventually figured it out and they had to do a blood sample. And it's like, the blood DNA is different than the cheek DNA.
That's kind of crazy that can happen, though.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like, this is a weird thing they made up for CSI, right? And it's like, oh no, that could actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then on top of that, even with genetic sex, the chromosomes alone do not fully tell the story of the genetics of sexual dimorphism. There are a number of genes involved in sexual characteristics, not all located on the sex chromosomes, and they can vary dramatically within chromosomal sex types, even among cells in an individual person and throughout one's life. So that kind of speaks to, he doesn't really get into details on this in this article, but that kind of speaks to the people that are saying sex is fixed. Like you can't change sex over the course of your life. He's kind of saying you can. Like you're the genetic.
Well, there's an aspect of that though. What was it? Was it on? I forget what the YouTuber was. There was a YouTuber who they're a scientist by trade, biologist, and they did a bit on like what sex is in a response to a lot of the TERF arguments, and they noted that like one of the most important things in the way that we present sexually is the way our body responds to hormones in general. So when you introduce more hormones into the body, as far as like anything we can measure is concerned, that's going to have more of a that's going to end up having more of an effect on how you look and how your body operates than anything else. So like people who end up saying you can't you may be able to decide your gender but you can't change your sex, like in one way maybe you're right, but in another way, in a way that's more important, kind of you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like the hormone washing is kind of one of the more important factors there.
Well, there's also along similar lines here, because hormones do play a very important part of sexual development, regardless of the chromosomes. There are females, like women. They present as women, they identify as women, but they have XY chromosomes because they have what's called androgen insensitivity. They're not sensitive to the hormone androgen, which would develop them as male. The terminology gets a little fuzzy with this because it is fuzzy. There is no it. If it was a binary, it would be simple to use terminology for this, but because it's not, that's why it's fuzzy. But yeah, so that's skipping ahead a little bit, but so there are a number of genes involved with sexual characteristics. Yeah, or we read that part. So another layer of genetic complexity is the gene copy number. So there are other genes that may or may not be located on the relevant chromosome, the XY or XX chromosomes. But like if you have extra copies of the WNT4 gene, you can develop atypical genitals and gonads and a rudimentary uterus and fallopian tubes, even with XY chromosomes. So that's like, yeah, you might have XY chromosomes, but you've got an extra copy of this gene, which caused you to develop extra stuff.
Which is why when people go like, it's your chromosomes that matter, you're like, again, you're kind of right, but also missing the point and also really wrong.
Yeah, so these are epigenetic factors. Sorry, there are other epigenetic factors at play. So epigenetic factors, if you ask Frank Turek, he'll tell you they are the structure of the cell. But Frank Turek is an idiot. That's completely wrong. Sorry, I had to get a Frank Turek dig in. I don't have any tweets from him, so I had to mention him. So an epigenetic factor is something that affects the expression of the DNA without affecting the DNA itself. So these would be environmental factors that change how your genetics are expressed without changing your genetics.
I think I remember Frank Turek talking about this when he was, because it's one of his arguments where he's like, evolution can't be true because epigenetics proves it wrong.
Yes.
Like, that's not how, no.
He doesn't have the slightest idea what epigenetics even are. That was the first video I ever covered of Frank Turek's. I remember I was scared of Frank Turek because everybody said, why are you going at the bottom of the barrel? Why don't you go after the good apologists like Frank Turek? And so I avoided him for a while until I was comfortable with what I was doing and like, okay, well now I think I know how to research well enough that I can counter some of the better apologetics. So I went to Frank Turek and it was like,
apologetics.
It's like, why was I scared of this guy? He doesn't have the slightest idea what he's talking about. But anyway, so the epigenetic factors here are like hormone levels at different stages of development, hormone receptor sensitivity, metabolic factors, and these are all things that can influence the development of sexual characteristics. And that's where the example was someone with androgen insensitivity could have XY chromosomes but develop as female.
Also, Belgard got it right. The video I was thinking of where the YouTuber was Forrest Valkai. Who was the one who was talking about
the video called Sensibility?
Sex and Sensibility. Yes, that's the video itself.
Great fucking video. I love it.
I have So I have on my phone paraphrase from his video, and I wrote these down last year. I still have them. A shit ton of notes that I took straight from his video and just went, no, no, this is good. This is amazing. I wrote it all down and went, no, whenever I've got to talk about gender, I will just refer to these notes.
So many people, I've just been like, they'll give me pushback on the sex and gender stuff, and I'm just like, just go watch this video. I don't want to argue with you. Go watch Forrest. He's good.
Yeah.
Oh, love Forrest Valkai. Shannon said she'd get him on tweets for me, but she never emailed him, I don't think. But I also never reminded her to email him because I forgot until this moment.
And here we are.
So now the next thing is gametes. So they'll say like, oh, well, if you produce sperm, you're a male. If you produce eggs, you're a female. And gametes are binary. You either do eggs or sperm.
Because gamete,
but
we have two gamete sizes.
Yeah. Okay. So no, it's not you either do eggs or sperm. It's that eggs and sperm are the two binary gametes. There are no middle grounds there. But there are intersex individuals with what are called ovotestes, which are like ovary/testicles, that can some of them can produce both eggs and sperm. So if you're defining sex by gametes, what is someone with ovotestes that produce both? Okay, so did someone say gametes? People always rib me for how I say gametes because I do a long A. I guess a lot of people say gametes.
I say gametes.
Yeah, but gametes sounds weird to me, so I say gametes.
But gamete sounds like something you do on a Wednesday night with your pals.
Yes, it does. It's another word for a circle jerk.
We called it a bagel game, but that's okay.
Yeah, so that might be a regional thing. That might be another case of I learned high school biology at a Christian school, because I remember it took me a while to change my pronunciation of alleles to alleles, because when I learned them in school, they were alleles.
Alleles?
Alleles.
What is an allele?
It's an allele.
It sounds like something crying out for help.
So maybe gametes is another one of those things, and it is properly gametes, but I feel like that's a minor enough distinction that I'm just going to keep saying gametes.
Welcome to the gamete. What's your name? Allele.
Allele.
Jesus. Charlie Pendrake in my chat says, my partner says we need more gametes.
All right. So when it comes to gametes, these are strictly binary, egg or sperm. However, even here, I didn't read that, but that's what I essentially just said. So the argument often goes that sex is only about reproduction. Oh, so this is people think about sex in an evolutionarily simplistic way. Like just forget about everything I said earlier about sex having evolved, therefore it must be a spectrum because nothing that evolves is a strict binary, really. But so they'll say like, oh, well, like evolutionarily speaking, sex is about reproduction. So the male has kids with the female. Like you need a male and a female to mate. But
I too think of biology only in the sense of breeding.
Yeah, so that's in, like, as Dr. Novella says, that's incredibly reductionist and misses the fact that traits often simultaneously serve multiple evolutionary ends. So sex in this instance, there are a lot of purposes for sex. There's
there's having fun with your partner.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't highlight that part, relief. So I skipped that sentence. Then I was like, wait a minute, why did I skip that sentence? Yeah, so there's bonding, social relationships, power, dominance, stress relief. Apparently, like if
exercise,
if people with prostates ejaculate regularly, they're less likely to get prostate cancer.
Yeah, sex is not just for breeding, but I understand if a lot of conservatives would like to shove that kink on us.
Yeah, so he says, what percentage of the time that humans have sex is the express purpose reproduction? How many people have no desire to ever have children but still have an active sex life? Can there be romance without sex? Why are there so many aspects of sex that are not strictly reproductive? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Like there's so many things that sex is relevant to that has nothing to do with reproduction. And in fact, a lot of times reproduction would be the undesirable end.
I've likened sex to a car crash before. Whenever I've talked about like consenting having a child. For me, the idea of sex operates like getting in a car. There are a lot of reasons you get in a car. One of them is not to get in a car crash, but getting in a car crash is a thing that can happen in a car. When you're consenting to sex, you're not necessarily consenting to, say, a pregnancy. When you consent to getting in a car, you're not consenting to a head-on collision.
Right.
Somebody Bragwood in my chat, how to scare a conservative, make mac and cheese and stir it.
What?
Oh, have you never seen that meme?
No.
It's this so this guy is making mac and cheese and he goes up to his mom and he just puts the microphone for the phone like really close to the mac and cheese so you hear the sound of the spoon moving through the creamy mac.
I know the sound.
And he goes to his mom and he goes, "Mom, you know what that is? That's what good pussy sounds like." It's one of the oldest, like I think it was a Vine, I want to say. God, Vine's been dead for a while.
If you can't laugh at a queef with your partner, what are you really doing?
You're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro is not familiar with that sound. My wife says that is the sound of disease.
Oh, Ben Shapiro. They tell on themselves so frequently. Like
they do.
I forget who it was, but there's someone that has a tweet that I keep seeing it occasionally. That was like, "I've never met a woman that enthusiastically engages in sex." You're like, yeah, that sounds like a you problem. I've met plenty. Haven't had sex with all of them, but okay. It's I'm just going to say it. It's going to come out eventually with the way we're going right now. But I have been seeing someone recently, and so that's kind of like, as I'm saying all these things, I'm thinking of like, I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to get into it, but
Mistress of the Fae, thank you for the follow.
Yeah, it's
Did I just chalked on my dinner?
No, I just like at some point I'm gonna slip up and say something that's gonna be like, "Oh, is he?" Like, yes, I am. Okay. Anyway, beyond gay meats, other primary sexual characteristics are clearly bimodal, but not strictly binary. I haven't had enough scotch for that to be a hard sentence to say. So this would be like primary sex characteristics that are clearly bimodal. So like they're the penis and the clitoris, they both vary significantly in size. Sometimes you get people that are born with ambiguous genitalia where you can't tell whether it's male or female genitalia. Sometimes labia can partially fuse into a scrotum. There's no sharp demarcation. Like it can be a little bit of both. It can be one or the other. It's bimodal. In the year 2000, there was a review that looked at the literature from 1955 onward, and they found that the frequency of deviation from the ideal male or female was as high as 2% of live births. So it's significantly more than the TERF community would actually say. Like they'll often say it's like under 1%, but like, nope, it's around 2% are this is deviation from the ideal male or female. What does that mean? I don't know. This article doesn't go into explicit detail as to what exactly that means, but this is part of like, it's not a binary, it's bimodal. So like there are characteristics that are not like it's not one or the other. It's like there's middle ground.
I can tell you what it is though. I can tell you. I know the answer to this one. Rhino, I want you to look at me.
I can't. You're an avatar.
But you're looking at me. This is the ideal male body type. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like.
Peak performance? Wait. No. I disagree. I refuse to believe that 98% of males are at peak performance.
No, I was saying this is the ideal male body type. This is what peak performance looks like. This right here.
Oh, your avatar?
Yeah, if you don't believe me.
Okay.
We can always just extend the hair. There you go. Now it looks even more male.
Okay. Yeah, and there was another review done in 2015 that put the estimate at 1.7%, which rounds up to 2%. I'll give them that. But at the end of the day, what this all comes down to is that there is no one measure by itself that determines biological sex, and more importantly, even within the subpopulation who have unambiguously male or female chromosomes, gametes, genitals, there's still considerable variation in their secondary sexual characteristics, which also vary in bimodal and not strictly binary pattern. Like, for instance, I have bigger boobs than a lot of women.
I do too.
Yeah.
I made them with gummy worms.
I made them with chips. That's not like that's. It's clearly not a binary. I have bigger boobs than some women. That is a fact. That is a matter of fact.
Yep.
And like, if you dispute that, like,
we can do the measuring thing. We can have a gamete. We can measure.
Oh, that'd be gay meat spelled like a track meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Getting all sorts of use out of the gay meats. But like for all the secondary sex characteristics, so there are clusters of typically male and typically female, but they're statistical with variation. So like I said, I have bigger breasts than some women who identify as women and are completely like nobody would contest that they are women. So like that's a secondary sexual characteristic. Clearly that's bimodal, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible for me to have bigger breasts than a woman.
And yet, here we are, living in reality, where that is a thing your body can do.
Yeah, so...
Wait, Rhino, did you know you have nipples? Isn't that so weird that you have nipples? For what purpose do you have nipples? If not for the fact that, our bodies are a lot more alike than what people would like to believe.
Your stream completely missed out on that.
Oh?
Yeah, because you just got my avatar up.
Yes.
I just flashed my nipple at the camera.
Oh. Don't tell Mr. Sophiles that. They draw porn.
Well, draw some Vice Rhino porn, man. Like, you kept promising me... I think I stretched my shirt collar out with that because now it's hanging a lot lower than it did before.
Yeah, you got a V-neck thing going on now.
I made a V-neck.
Yep. Oh, so now that you've said it, you know it's going to happen, right?
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Oh dear. Have fun with that stuff.
Try and shock me. Anyone in Suris' thing that draws art stuff, I dare you to try and shock me. Send it to me on Twitter at ViceRhino. Don't send it in my DMs because I never check my DMs. Yeah, my therapist has recommended that I get off Twitter so I don't have it on my phone anymore. And I try not to use Twitter for chat with, like, I got you on WhatsApp now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Yeah, so what the point of this is all biological traits vary in complex and messy ways, and sexual characteristics are no exception. Why would they be? That's kind of what we were getting at earlier. People are generally born... so going back into how it's biologically based, people are generally born with their sexual orientation, even if it's not fully realized until they go through puberty. And in fact, Dr. Novella would consider sexual orientation to be a part of biological sex, which is why he divided up sexuality as he did above. And that... so like that's a part of attraction. It's a biologically based thing, apparently. And so he says years of research has led to the conclusion that sexual orientation among humans is simply more fluid than old school strictly binary concepts. People are heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, and everything in between. I don't think anyone can reasonably defend today the position that sexual orientation is strictly binary and any deviation is pathological. No, you can't. And so what he's saying in here is that gender identity is kind of along the same lines. It's got a biological basis, and there's no reason why we should expect it to be binary. This I kind of highlighted because I love how this just worked out. So in a commentary published in the open access journal PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, PNAS, I love that name. Even better though, neurobiologist Dick Swab.
The names.
So,
names.
Dick Swab once published in PNAS that current evidence indicates that sexual differentiation of the human brain occurs during fetal to neonatal development, and programs our gender identity, our feeling of being male or female, and our sexual orientation as hetero, homo, or bisexual. So Dick Swab said it in PNAS. It must be true. I refuse to believe that Dick Swab publishing in PNAS would not say true things. I mean,
Firecracker Hot Rod 69 said it on Xbox Live. It has to be true.
His name was Richard Swab and he leaned into it, okay? Like, I have said time and again that, like, if my last name was Butt, like Kyle Butt, and my first name was Richard, I would absolutely lean into it and go by Dick Butt. And so, like,
I would love to do that. Just like you go up in the middle of a presentation. Hello, everyone. My name is Dick Butt, but you can call me What Is Wrong with My Parents?
Yeah, but like, so Dick Swab, his name's Richard, but he's going by Dick. Props to him for leaning into it. I appreciate that. Anyway,
takes bravery.
Yeah, so strictly binary definition of biological sex cannot possibly capture all of the actual variation, which includes many possible states of sexual orientation. You can see on the other side that claiming that there are only two sexes because gametes is hopelessly reductionist and poorly informed. And then when he gets to gender identity, he goes into, like, basically how all of the arguments against all of the arguments that were used against homosexuality are now being applied to those with non-traditional gender identities and with just as little scientific basis, even though all the science that we have so far suggests that it's going to be the exact same situation as homosexuality, where we find that it's actually got a biological basis in brain development, in utero brain development.
It's the thing that's like, so you notice that all of these arguments, they got used against black people, they got used against women, they got used against gay people, and now they're being used against trans people. And they're always the same argument. There's always a point of, like, biological inferiority that's used at some point, always, while simultaneously saying that whatever this other group of people are also going to take over the world somehow if we give them equal rights, magically.
Yeah. So he says to take the position that the gender assigned at birth is completely objective and unambiguous, the beginning and ending of biological sex, is also to believe that external genitalia as manifested at birth are 100% determinative of every other aspect of biological sex, but we know this not to be true. So basically, if you're saying sex is a binary and you're denying the existence of trans people, you're just wrong, objectively and scientifically. You're wrong. And then we already kind of got into the denying the difference out of existence. We're almost to the point where I would normally be going into the tweets, and we're still in the first news article. So I'm just going to.
This is why you made it first.
This is why I made it first. Well, no, it's the alcohol thing, because I've been drinking this whole time, and I am starting to. I am starting to feel the effects, but
that makes sense.